It's important to make the right decisions, like when to go for it on fourth down, or when to kick the field goal or go for the touchdown. It's also important to make the right insurance decisions, too. That's why my office, Trey McAdams State Farm, is here to help you select the right protection at the right price. Our office will make sure you understand your State Farm coverages, so you'll know what to expect when the unexpected happens. With Trey McAdams State Farm, it's easy to make the right call. When you want the real deal, like a good neighbor, State Farm is there. Proud sponsor of the Tennessee Vols.
There certainly was plenty of shining moments in Tennessee's 33-14 win over Mississippi State. The offense looked good in its opening drive. Boo Carter made some really flashy plays, but also a couple areas that, cause us a little bit of concern moving forward for this team. Paige Dauer alongside Jimmy Hyams. I do want to start on the positive note, of course. Nico Imaliava led the offense on an opening drive touchdown to Squirrel White, 34 yards, something we've not seen since Kent State all the way back in September. And when I asked Josh Heupel about that after the game, he kind of just shook his head, almost in disbelief that it's kind of been that long, because he's again, I've not had these offensive issues in any time, anywhere that he's coached a team. But really, just very encouraging to see them be able to do that in the opening drive, kind of get the monkey off their back in a sense, and have a better first half than what we've seen here in conference play.
Yeah, they did score on the first drive. It's been quite a while. The previous 3 games, they actually moved the ball, but they had a fumble, they had a holding penalty, and they ended up not scoring on their opening drives. This time they didn't shoot themselves in the foot, but they ended up getting 20 points in the first half. That's good news. The bad news is after their opening drive score, they then fumble inside the red zone. Dylan Sampson, his 3rd fumble in 3 games.
Yeah.
And then they got an interception return to the plus 9-yard line, and they can't punch it in.
Right.
So they're leaving a lot of points on the board, even though they had 20 in the first half. But there were encouraging signs. They did move the football, and I thought that Nico played pretty well. Sampson ran well in the first half, but in spite of that, they still are leaving a lot of points on the board.
Yeah, and I think kind of all of these buts that we're adding into this, we even saw it on that opening drive touchdown where they're in 4-down territory already, maybe because of the struggles that Max Gilbert had coming into this game. He was 0 of 3 against Kentucky when he was out on the field for his field goal attempts, 1 of 3 against Alabama. Much better night on Saturday night, of course. But I think the reason why, on that, 3rd down when Dylan Sampson wasn't able to punch it for a first down, you bring up a 4th and 3 situation, but then Lance Hurd has a holding penalty. So then you replay the down, you add 3 more to it, so it's 4th and 6, and I'm sure Josh Heupel's just reeling on the sideline, not another opening drive where we just can't punch it in the red zone. But I think it kind of showed great maturity with this team as well, that despite, having to try and convert on 4th down in the opening drive at home, and then you get a penalty, so you get pushed back a little further, they were still able to kind of snap and clear, and then of course go in for that passing touchdown, which again, we've not really seen a ton of passing touchdowns from Nico much lately either, so that was another nice thing to see.
At Wallace Real Estate, trust is more than just a word. It's been our foundation since 1936. Whether you seek backyard adventures or a quiet spot for your morning coffee, we understand what makes a house a home. Our agents are here to simplify your home journey and to lead you through the process, whether buying or selling. With Wallace Real Estate, you're getting more than guidance. You're gaining a local partner dedicated to bringing your dreams to life. Start your real estate journey at wallacetn.com.
Well, first off, I guess Lance Hurd gets an assist.
Yeah.
Unintended assist. The other thing is Nico only had 3 touchdown passes in conference games.
Yeah.
And so he did get that throw. It was a really nice throw. Squirrel White got open. And I think he's finally healthy for the first time in a while. He's been bothering a shoulder injury, but that was a big play for him. And so that did open the gates a little bit for Tennessee's offense. And I think even though they shot themselves in the foot the next couple of drives, it did give them a little bit of a jolt of confidence to know they could finally score on the first possession.
Did you think it was interesting after Boo Carter got the interception, returned it for 9 yards, has them well within the 5-yard line or 10-yard line? Because it reminded me when Josh Heupel was talking about how they get tense in red zone situations. Of course, you think about, all right, you don't have as much green grass to work with. You know that the touchdown or score is pending, so you get really tense. Were you surprised that they essentially decided to run it 4 times up the middle and were not able to punch it in? Were you maybe expecting a pass play or two, or how did you like the play calling there?
I think I was a little bit Well, here's what I think happened. Sampson fumbled on the previous series, and he got benched.
Yeah.
And they went with Peyton Lewis. Now, if you're going to go with Peyton Lewis there, I don't think you run it 4 times.
Off the middle.
Right. I'm convinced if you got Sampson in there, he's going to score. But I think they sent another message to him. I think he got benched the week before for a fumble. So, but when you have Lewis in there, I think you got to have Nico rolling out, throwing a pass, doing something a little bit more creative than just running up the middle 4 times.
Is it reflective on maybe the confidence they have in the offense in those moments? Because, I mean, you have 4 tries to punch it in like a couple of yards away. We're essentially standing where they were when they were trying to punch it in earlier. Is it just a reflection of maybe the lack of confidence that they didn't try to pass it once, or even a quarterback design run?
I don't know what it was a reflection of. I didn't agree with it. I didn't think that's what they should have done, so I'm having trouble figuring that out.
Yeah.
Maybe they just thought the offensive line was good enough to bowl over Mississippi State and score anyway. So maybe that was part of their thinking, but I'm not doing that with the freshman running back that hadn't really played a whole lot. So I just saw that differently. I didn't think they handled that series very well. Yeah,
well, that success continued in the second quarter as well when there was that 73-yard bomb to Dante Thornton, which outdoes his season best of a 66-yard reception, and another touchdown reception for him as well, one he had in the final seconds of the first quarter against Oklahoma. I mean, Dante Thornton really from last year to now has had so much growth, and Kelsey Pope has talked a lot about him and just how positive he is, because he knows he's gone through some lows here with the team, but he's been able to fight through that, and I'm sure it's really rewarding for him for that to have transpired on the field, and he gets that 73-yard touchdown, which was a little underthrown.
Yeah, and here's the thing about Thornton. He's averaging over 30 yards a catch. That's the really good news. The not so good news is he's averaging about 2 catches a game. Now, I think he's been banged up a little bit, but my goodness, he's a guy, I'm going to target him at least 10 times a game. I think he's become the most reliable receiver. He's a deep play threat. He can also catch the short yardage or intermediate passes. I think he's been underused a little bit. I'd like to see Tennessee get the ball to him more. Now, look, the more you get it to him, he's not going to be averaging 30 yards a catch. I get that. But for a guy that's averaging over 30 a catch, he needs to be getting more than 2 catches a game.
Yeah, he was your leading receiver as well. Entering the game against Mississippi State, he had over 400 receiving yards on just 17 receptions.
Yeah, so in 8 games. So that's 2.1 catches a game. So that, and his yardage total, he could really have a lot of yards if they targeted him more. But I do think they need to get him more involved in the passing game and make him more of a primary target.
And of course, we weren't really truly able to see how much this team could turn it on in the second half because Nico Imaliava, of course, as many of us know, did not come back in the second half after being ruled out with an upper body injury. So put in Gaston Moore, who the team was really excited to see. Josh Heupel does say Nico Imaliava should be good to go. He'll be back later, this week and ready for next game. So that is the most encouraging sign that you can have. But Gaston Moore, who's been around the program just as long as Josh Heupel has, a really great opportunity for him, and he took advantage of most of it.
Yeah, and I think, so with Nico, the upper body injury was a head injury. So I'm sure they don't want us to use the C word, but I think that's probably what it was. So, but they do expect him back for Georgia. Gaston Moore comes in, and it was kind of interesting. They didn't just say, okay, we're going to hand it up the middle all the time. They threw a lot of deep balls.
Yeah, they did.
And one of the things Moore did was when he threw a deep ball, several occasions, he underthrew it, and they drew pass interference penalties. And asked Squirrel White, when you see an underthrown ball, do you try to draw pass interference? And he hummed and hawed and said, yes, we do try to draw pass interference.
Grin and smile.
On the deep, and I don't blame. That's what they should do. So, but he did. They took advantage of that. There was a particular drive where they had 2 15-yard penalties that helped set up a score for Tennessee. So, but I thought Moore did okay. But let's make no mistake about it. There's a huge difference in Tennessee's potential and productivity with Moore at quarterback versus Nico. So they certainly, in my opinion, have to have Nico against Georgia if Tennessee wants to win that game.
Yeah, absolutely agree. But it was nice, being able to see Gaston get some very meaningful snaps because you just never know, obviously, of course, what's going to happen later this season. So for him to get that under his belt, and, the team was so excited for him to get that opportunity, and even the defense was very excited. So it was really nice to see that and just the success that he had during his time on the field in the second half. But we can't not talk about Tennessee's defense. A lot of the things to know that we're talking about all have like a butt to them. Tennessee's defense has a butt to them. them as well. But we'll start on the positive note. I mean, Boo Carter, I mean, what a game he had, not even just in the star position, but on special teams, you know, being able to return it, you know, 23 yards. The TFL he had on the first play of the game against Mississippi State, had an interception that was returned to, I think, the 9-yard line, and Tennessee wasn't able to capitalize on that beautiful interception there. And it was so funny hearing him talk after the game. He's like, I'm just, you know, really passionate about the game. I love contact. I love, you know, to go out there and get and tackle somebody. But him being able to be on special teams is just a true testament to what he's been doing during practice to build that trust.
And he wants to be a punt returner, and he's good at it. And I also thought he made a pretty clever move. There was a punt that bounced, and it looked like it could have gone another 8 or 10 yards. He grabbed it and ran out of bounds real quick to help with field position. It was interesting on the interception that he made. He talked about jumping the route, and he said, I was trying to score in the end zone, but these linemen kept getting in the way, which are basically his own linemen, and he couldn't
He's
see.
Like, I can't see through it.
So he ended up not scoring on that play. But he is a terrific athlete, and I think, like some of the other young players for Tennessee, the more he plays, the better he's going to get. But he is so quick, and he's got great speed. He's got pretty good instincts about him. He loves the game, loves to hit. I think he is going to make some more really good plays for Tennessee the rest of this month.
Yeah, and I think one of the returns that you're talking about was a 23-yard return at the end of the first half, where Nico and the offense were able to get just a couple more plays in to get Max Gilbert in field goal range. They did just that. Of course, he kicks it through the uprights, and Tennessee goes into the halftime scoring a field goal as time expires. Yeah,
they did, and credit Tennessee for doing it. Criticized Mississippi State for screwing up the clock
play calling on their end.
They should have run out the clock and got out of there. Instead, they threw some passes and ran out of bounds and gave Tennessee enough time to get another field goal. But that was good. And you mentioned the field goal by Gilbert, so he goes 4 for 4. And there was a lot of cheering when he made the first field goal, then the second one, and then Tennessee showed a little bit more confidence by having him try one from 51 yards. He hadn't made a 50-yarder in his Tennessee career. And he was 1 of 6 in the last 2 games from field goal range entering this game. But I think that's a huge jolt of confidence for Gilbert to make all 4 of his field goal attempts.
I mean, you could even tell from the technical chip shot that he had, which essentially was a distance of an extra point. He was juiced even after that. So I think getting that first one and seeing the first one go through in a new game definitely gave him a renewed sense of confidence. And that part was so great to see. So here comes our butt to the Tennessee defense. In back-to-back games, the opponents are rushing for more yards than what their averages will tell you that Tennessee has allowed this season. So Mississippi State had 179 yards on the game. Well, 136 of those yards came on explosive plays where they had 10-plus yards on that rush. That's not something we're used to seeing. And then now after Kentucky and Mississippi State, it's kind of becoming a norm.
Yeah, they had 7 runs of at least 10 yards at total, what you mentioned. And there were gaping holes. There were obviously some missed assignments, some gap control that they didn't affect. I wonder, maybe this is the first game where they really missed Keenan Peely at middle linebacker. And I saw Tennessee with T-Lander at linebacker, and I saw them using Smith some at linebacker. It looked like Carter played some in the middle as Tennessee moved around with their alignment. But boy, Mississippi State hit them with some big runs that you have not seen from Tennessee. Basically, State double what Tennessee had been allowing on the run this year. And now Tennessee still held them to 14 points. Tennessee has gone 9 games now without the opponent scoring 20 points or more. Tennessee hadn't done that since 1966. The 66 team did not give up a 20-point game all year. They gave up 99 points all year in 1966. But that almost doesn't seem like modern football, right?
No, not at all.
Now in this day and age, that's so difficult to do. That's why I think the defense, even though they struggled some against the run, they did hold State to 10 of 26 in the passing game, less than 100 yards. They got 4 sacks. They got a strip sack by Jason Jenkins. So they did do some good things on defense, but it was alarming to see Mississippi State hit them with some of those big runs.
Yeah, and I know we're really taking a magnifying glass to the Tennessee defense because there are so many positive things and strength out of that unit. But, you talk about going above the average. So after Kentucky, their average went up to about 80 yards rushing per game. And then you see 179, like the double that you mentioned. And for them just to say, oh, we weren't really fitting our gaps that well. We weren't recognizing pressures on the edge that well. They're not doing anything out of the ordinary. It's all very fundamental what they're doing. I think kind of can be a little bit of an indictment on them not being good in their fundamentals in a back-to-back scenario.
Well, they weren't disciplined.
No,
they weren't, and that's a concern. And there's no doubt that Josh Heupel is a little bit worried about that, and so is the defensive coaching staff that they got gashed by that. Look, if Mississippi State can do that to you, Georgia can do it to you, and Georgia's vulnerable.
Yes, they're coming off an ugly loss.
They are. Ole Miss whipped them pretty good. Carson Beck is a shell of what he was a year ago.
Yeah.
He's throwing interceptions all over the place.
12 interceptions in the last few games.
Yeah, he had 11 going into Ole Miss and threw at least one.
Yeah.
So they have a couple of good running backs, and the thing I wonder about, did they see something that Mississippi State did that they will try to utilize against Tennessee and take advantage of Tennessee? And maybe Tennessee saw some things they did that they can correct before they play Georgia. But that run defense that they showed against State will be a huge problem if you want to beat the Bulldogs in Athens.
Yeah, because I think what Mississippi State was able to do was a little different than what Kentucky was able to do. You look to that opening drive where they had that 50-yard run, but that was just up and down the sideline. A lot what happened Saturday was a lot in the middle of the field.
Right, in between the tackles, just right up the gut. And there was no linebacker in sight on a lot of those runs. So I do think one of the things that hurt Tennessee defensively is Mississippi State showed a lot of motion on just about every play. And a lot of those plays, they had three guys going in motion. And in fact, one time, two of them collided as they were trying to go in motion to different sides.
Yeah.
So I think that threw Tennessee off a little bit. I think that messed up with their alignment. It messed up a little bit on the positioning of the linebackers, which allowed, I think, State to pop some runs up the middle. But those were gaping holes with no linebacker in sight. That's something Tennessee's got to correct.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, those are our three things, maybe an A and B in there as well, to know after the Tennessee beating on homecoming night against Mississippi State. I'll be back Monday to talk all things Tennessee football as they turn their attention to the Georgia Bulldogs. In the meantime, don't forget to go over to the Rewind on the homepage to listen to the most recent episode with Jimmy Hyams and Daryl Dickey talking about that nice 1986 Sugar Bowl. Anyway, thank you all for watching. Please like, subscribe. We'll be back Monday.